Hi, Nicole. This is Nicole Ward-Parr. Nicole is the National Director of Sales for Moss Adams, which is one of the largest professional services and accounting firms. And she's responsible for directing sales for, at least 100 people who are always at her beck and call to go out, or she's at their beck and call to go out and make sales happen. And I was very excited that you agreed to be here today because we've been in such a tough market. Do you see any green shoots out there?
I will caveat it by saying I'm not an economist, obviously, but as a really large public accounting firm with significant practices in the private equity and the VC space, we do have an interesting lens and perspective on things. We go to market by industry, so we apply that filter as well. But I think what we're seeing is different sectors performing very differently, right? So a lot of range across various industries. Specifically, we've seen a considerable slowdown in healthcare, in consulting. Some of the other sectors like manufacturing, energy, financial services, they seem to be staying strong or holding. But overall, I think the green shoots are really, and this isn't a huge surprise, but are in the technology space, right? With a lot of the advancements we're seeing in AI. I think health and wellness is still strong post-pandemic. And then our sustainability and ESG practice is still really attracting a lot of investment dollars. But, overall, it's definitely slower, right? I think it's
Yeah.
slower for the C-suite to make decisions. I think they're slower to spend money on certain projects. And I think we're seeing executives needing to enroll more stakeholders into their decisions to make sure that there's alignment with their larger company objectives. So fewer of those one-offs, those one-off decisions that we've seen in the past. And I think, lastly, I would say that as a chief sales officer, I think what it means is that we really have to be more targeted than ever in terms of how we go to market. And I think we have to put a lot more opportunities into the top of the funnel to ensure that we're closing the business we need to do to hit our annual targets.
I read this week in the Wall Street Journal. Of course, you know that all of the consulting firms and accounting firms are not hiring the MBAs right now. That's kind of gone by the wayside. And what are you seeing in terms of that? Are you hiring or are you kind of holding back until things change a little bit?
We are holding. And I think the reason for that, and I think a lot of the public accounting firms, we overhired in professional services and consulting, overhired during COVID because we were choking on work. And then, we sort of made all these modifications, people working from home, lots of various initiatives around culture, etc. And then now it's like, we've seen this wane in business, etc. And it's been challenging, right? So we are definitely holding steady. I know many of our peer firms are the same. A lot of the consulting and larger professional service firms are holding steady. We've also seen some of them obtain private equity money, which has been interesting. That's been an industry disruption, if you will, within public accounting, etc. So lots going on.
That's interesting. So, of all the challenges, maybe it's obvious it's always usually about money. What challenges are you seeing that most of the companies are facing? I don't mean your sector, but the
In general,
sector
yeah,
in
sure.
general. Can you say there's like, this is the number one, this is the number two?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is where the advantage point of public accounting means that we get to bird's eye view into thousands of different companies, different business models, different industries, different structures, right? And I think thematically, one of the things that we're hearing is the real grappling with all of the advanced technology that's coming at us. A lot of our clients and C-suite, they're trying to figure out what's the right tool, what technology do we invest in, and then how do we garner the right internal resources to implement it, right? So I think it's putting the onus on executives that they really have to demonstrate internally to stakeholders, board otherwise, or their boards and otherwise, what the ROI is for certain investments, right? So again, it's that slower to pull the trigger that I mentioned earlier. And it's just hard, I think, for C-suite right now to know how to prioritize with so many competing objectives, certain investments that they actually want to commit to. I think we're also seeing that these AI tools and all of the cool technology that is coming at us is only as good as the data hygiene that we're exercising. So that's a huge concern for people. Is we can have all the great tools in the world, but if it's sitting on top of junk, that's an issue. So that's been a huge push for many of our clients. And this will probably sound like I'm beating an old drum, but cyber and risk are still hugely top of mind for board members and C-suite, right? Keeping everybody's stuff safe. I know that's not a big surprise and not a very sexy one to talk about, but it's still very, very much a concern. I think remote work and how that is impacting culture and how does that continue or does it is still very top of mind, as is the tax implications around residency.
It's interesting. There's been a lot about the loneliness factor in our society, right? People are lonelier than they've ever been. And a lot of it is especially young people because they don't go into an office. And then they do go back into the office and they're actually kind of happy. Because you have a lot of people who are reporting to you, and I know a lot of your folks, it seems like the grown-ups can work remotely, but some of the younger people really could use some guidance. Do you see people coming back to the office at Moss Adams or at other places, or what do you think is going to happen in the end of this year? Is there going to be a shift?
Sure, it's a good question, and I can speak to it from our perspective and then more broadly what we're seeing with our clients. It has been incredibly difficult getting people back into an office. And for the world of public accounting and professional services, where it's an apprenticeship model, where you have, your employees come in and really learn from, their directors or partners to kind of come up the ranks. A lot of that is being lost by not coming into an office. We have tried to evangelize it, but it just continues to be difficult. And I think we will get to a point where we require at least a few days a week, but I don't know that we will ever, as an industry, and again, I'm speaking for myself and many of our peers out there, I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we are in an office 5 days a week again. I think for our clients more broadly, it's more industry specific. I think some industries, you've got to come in, right? But it's still a struggle. I know that when I think about certain banks, when I think about, I'll give an example, Aon, a massive insurance company, they cannot get people to come back in an office. And, I think we all get used to that travel and entertainment line being really low. Nobody wants to see that go back up again. So, and then the real estate costs and, and all the space, costs that play into it. I think it's complicated, but I don't think we'll ever get back in full time, at least not in the near term that I can see. But
That's interesting. But you think it could be 3 days by the end of the year? I mean, we're at 2 days. So I think, gosh, we should have another day, but I think that would be a challenge.
Right. I think it'll be 2, maybe 3 at the most, right? I think it'll be difficult to get more than that and hire and retain people.
Well, I'll get back to something else, which is, you talked about healthcare, and we do a lot of work in the healthcare world. And we also work with startups and mid-market companies, and everybody has struggled to raise money. What do your people, how are they helping them get ready for a raise? What can these companies do to attract some capital in times when it's just nobody wants to take that bet if they haven't already invested in you?
Right. No, it is a concern. And it's like you say, it's super tight right now, right? It seems like there's even more hoops that people have to jump through to get it and to justify getting it, right? And then it impacts everyone, right? Their ability to scale, to innovate, to grow, by not getting access to it. And I was just reading the numbers to echo your point, that with startups, well-funded startups, there were like 45 that closed in 2020 or 2021 and 2022. And in 2023, it was like 125 closed because of lack of funding. And 2024 is looking to be the same, right? So,
You mean go out of business? These companies went out of business.
business, exactly. Yeah, sorry that they literally closed up due to just, not getting funding. And then I think, 2023 was half the funding that we saw in 21 and 22, right? And I think we're tracking the same way here. So, I think we are hearing that the second half of this year might pick up a little bit. But there's a lot of dry powder out there. Who knows what it means for sort of M&A and investment dollars. But I think how we get, with our clients in our startup practice, it's diligence, right? It's making sure, are they doing more with less, right? Are they doing, are they looking at strategic partnerships, right? Are they thinking about how they might be able to pivot, right? Are they being creative about what they have and doing the most with what they have to really demonstrate that fiscal responsibility, the type of responsibility that reads well with investors, right? And I think they're just buttoning up and making sure you've got the right butts in the right seats. There's not a lot of excess. And our partners spend a lot of time giving that guidance and giving that insight. But I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball on that specifically.
Well, you talked about strategic alliances. Is that something? So Moss Adams goes in there and works with these companies and tries to find partners for them.
Totally. Whether it's hey, let's introduce you to this particular incubator or this other, or this, other company that's, complementary to what you're doing, where you could be, sharing IP and intellectual knowledge and sort of, learning from one another, right? So absolutely, we connect our, the certain companies and startups that we're working with people that we know at funds. That doesn't mean that they get the funding they're looking for, but we can certainly get them an audience with that, right? Or at least get them some conversation, which could then give them some good advice and guidance. So we do everything we can to try to position those folks in our web as best we can, and use our network and connections accordingly.
Thank you, Nicole. Next time, lunch is on me.
You got it.
Okay, take care then.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.